All right, we have a very special interview today, and can you, first of all, tell us who you are?
Yes, my name is Darrel Hamamoto. I'm the author of this book called Servitors of Empire, and I'm a professor at the University of California, Davis for about 21 years. And I'm in the Department of Asian American Studies, and I won't get into it too deeply at this point, but due to my research and findings about vaccination issues, I mean, I've been following it for years and years. I first started looking into biowarfare and chemical warfare as used in Vietnam. And then as you look at it historically, it goes back further and further and further. So at this point in 2017, by the way, we're streaming here from the state capital of California, Sacramento, where Dr. Richard Pan holds forth at the behest of Big Pharma. And speaking of Richard Pan, I was on the road and I got an emergency phone call from one of the producers at the local ABC network affiliate here in Sacramento. And the anchor, a very intelligent woman, Cristina Mendonça, interviewed me, just a short piece, talking about SB 277, which was sponsored by Dr. Richard Pan, who, by the way, up until recently was a faculty member at the University of California, Davis Medical School. I think he's severed his relationship there. So I went on air, and it was just a very, very short bit. They wanted to get a balanced view of the pros and cons, and I had signed a petition against it, and I think that's how they found me. And the University of California, Davis has a very, very sophisticated intelligence operation. They call it public information, but that's a synonym for spying. They do it on students, staff, and faculty. So all this public utterances of mine, which are protected speech, by the way, extramural utterances, has been going back to them very, very carefully. And at the time, we had this horrid chancellor, notorious world over, by the name of Linda P.B. Katehi, an engineer, an antenna holder, patent holder. And we learned subsequently through the great reporting of Diana Lambert here at the Sacramento Bee that Linda Katehi had spent $170,000 public funds to scrub all these types of references to her alone. So I'm just telling you this to give the idea of the forces arrayed against people who, true to their rights and responsibilities as public employees. I work for the state of California, the people of the state of California, not Big Pharma. I want to reiterate that point because a lot of professors think they work for the university and the apparatus there, especially the administrators. So that was my journey into probably, well, it goes back even further, but it's really been intensified over the past 3 years of official oppression and harassment at the hands of the administration. Linda P.B. Katehi, more specifically, the Vice Provost of Student Affairs, Maureen Stanton, who told me one day when I went to complain to her about the harassment I was receiving, she said, "Professor Hamamoto, I'm a scientist. You have to show me proof." So I took that as a challenge. And since that time, I've accumulated a whole library of academic journal articles. And her department itself has huge problems because they're very closely connected to Monsanto. And when I mention Monsanto, it's connected to this larger effort that we're engaged here, including the anti-SB 277 and anti-mandatory vaccination movement that's taking place globally. And I'm glad to hear that you're going overseas to the UK to do a little bit of reportage, because I think these cross-cultural, cross-national comparisons will reveal a global effort to degrade human life. Both the built environment, it's all about engineering, right? Bioengineering, cultural engineering, engineering, electrical engineering, double E, right? Mechanical engineering. This came out of the Macy conference back, I think in the 1930s. They've workshopped this. You're going into the heart. I'm speaking to Joshua Coleman here, for those of you who don't know. You know him, of course. But you're going into the belly of the beast when you go to Britain, the United Kingdom, because and I have to keep exploring here, but I think all roads lead not to Rome, but to the City of London, the square mile. That's the financial center. We know about Smith, Glaxo, Klein, or I'm sorry, I might be getting the names inverted, but we know about Pfizer and the usual suspects. But here's something for all we citizen researchers to start checking out. Start looking up in your search engine. I won't mention that awful name, right? Your search engine, the Burroughs Wellcome Trust. Burroughs Wellcome, it's Wellcome. And it's an Anglo-American pharmaceutical, but beyond pharmaceutical, global entity that pays tons of money to researchers and astroturf groups and even state representatives, right? They have an endless supply of money because they're the ones that print it. So it's the Wellcome, and it's an Anglo-American, meaning British and American. It's a transatlantic, I guess, consortium that is workshopping all this. And I just mentioned this because while we were focusing on rats like Dr. Rich, I guess I can call him a rat because I'm Asian American, so you can't really call me a racist, right? And by the way, this book is all about Asian American rats who the Anglo-American leadership have recruited in order to act as front men and women for this awful globalist pharmaceutical empire. This is the new colonialism. Now it's colonizing our bodies, our minds, and even our souls, right? They've done the physical colonization, now it's us, we sentient human beings. All the way to the top banana, Dr. Margaret Chan of the World Health Organization. So I broke that down. And of course, typically in academia, when you publish a book, it's almost automatic that you get a merit and promotion. In this case, I did not. They just dug in on me harder. Thank you, Vice Provost Mo Stanton. You're going down. So not only did they not give me a merit and promotion, they started really going in on me. I haven't had a merit and promotion in 10 years. Don't feel sorry for me. I'm just telling you, just give me the background of how these people operate. And they're hoping that I will kill myself, that I'll do something self-destructive. And I'll tell the live audience right now, I visited my physician, Dr. Josh Daima, at the UC Davis Medical Center. On Monday, he's given me a clean bill of health. So if something untoward happens to me, if I drop over dead of a heart attack, or die of quickly from a live cancer virus, well, you'll know what happens. Because I'm not exaggerating. This is how the University of California rolls.
Do you own a gun?
Yes.
Okay, well, I was going to say, if you don't own a gun, don't get one, because therefore you can't kill yourself with it if you don't own one.
Oh, okay.
So that's good to consider. You want to protect yourself, at the same time, it's also good to not own.
Well, let me revise that. I might. I'll just keep them guessing. How's that?
Right.
But let's put it this way. I know how to defend myself.
Good.
Yes. Yeah. That's really, really vital. And defense, of course, includes all the way, education, right? The knowledge. So this is what, and the reason why UC Davis in particular, and if I haven't mentioned it already, Richard Pan was a faculty member there before. The reason why UC, and this is through my research, because I was trying to figure out why were these people harassing me? Why were they targeting me? Why were they retaliating so aggressively? Why did they put all these pit bulls up there in the administration to come after me? Why did they send students to target me, to come into my sexuality course and try to disrupt it and write defamatory, slanderous, libelous material and post it publicly? Why am I going into these hearings at the end of this week? I wanted to answer all these questions. And what I've come up with at this point is that the University of California, Davis, it has this great image as an agricultural paradise in school, and they treat large animals and pets, and they have a world-renowned wine program, right, all that. But its real claim to fame took place right up into the years leading to World War II and after, because they were related to the Manhattan Project. Dr. Edward Teller's home campus was UC Davis. He had an office here. He loved it here. And it's not that far from the Lawrence Livermore, what is now the Lawrence Livermore laboratories. And the reason I mention this is because there is a historical connection between the Manhattan Project and the vaccination project that we're seeing right here. It's a continuous thread. For the Manhattan Project, the handlers, the Wellcome people, as Wellcome Trust, the big boys in DC and the Pentagon, and in the city of London, Wall Street, they brought in all these German physicists primarily and researchers. I think most of your audience knows about Project Paperclip, right? The most infamous name attached to that is Dr. Wernher von Braun, right, who later became the head of NASA, right? This is a true story. It's stranger than fiction. They brought thousands of German physicists, and von Braun himself was a party member. He was a Nazi, right? He ran slave labor camps, and that's the foundation of this complex here, right? So nuclear bombs got a lot of bad press after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I've taught at the University of Hiroshima as a Fulbright scholar. I got to do some research. I got to visit the facilities, talk to people, right? And this is where the gears started to spin. So that was very successful, bringing in foreign scientists, brilliant, trained at the great German and Central European universities of the age, right? They come out of the Habsburg system of education. That's why they were so great in technologies and scientific accomplishment. Brilliant imperial education system. So that was a very good template. And those people eventually died off. They retired. They got, in von Braun's case, awards, right? Kudos from the US government. So what happened, and this is my original insight, and that's what one of the insights that's here in this book, is that since Operation Paperclip was so successful, why not Operation Rice Paperclip? That is, the mass importation of Asian physicists, scientists, and engineers to replace the German ones. So the immigration laws were changed in 1965, the Immigration Act of 1965, to bring in a new cohort of people like this who could be put up at the highest level of government, military, education, and now even culture. Right? And political alliances are being forged here because we're talking about a global system of oppression, a silent one. Hiroshima and Nagasaki was very messy. It was a really bad public relations blunder for the United States bankers and the military and the universities, including the University of California. So when you think about it, vaccines are much more effective. They don't really, in fact, you can market it as a net gain, as a help to humanity, instead of something destructive, massively destructive.
Right.
So think about what we're facing right now as a massive global, international, multinational, cross-cultural Manhattan Project directed against humanity.
And you mentioned hearings at the end of the week. Can you talk about that and why those are happening?
Yes. The University of California employs about 60 full-time attorneys. And I don't know how much manpower or effort is devoted to harassing faculty, but a good deal of it is. And Janet Napolitano, some of you may remember her from the Department of Homeland Security. She left there under a cloud of scandal, and then she was just slipped in here as president of the University of California. Janet Napolitano, who, by the way, is having problems with cancer, all right? So those of you out there, or those of you who know people who are serving this system, you're not immune to this by any means. So she sent her best attack dog, his name's Donald Margolis, to crush me, to put the coonskin up on the wall, like LBJ said in Vietnam. I've also studied the Vietnam War, and a lot of what we're seeing here, the chemical warfare, biowarfare, psychological warfare, mind control, it's all been documented. A lot of it was workshopped in Vietnam, in the Philippines, even before then. And I'm telling you this because one of the charges that Margolis is trying to get me on is that I'm teaching material that's not relevant to Asian American studies. I'm telling you that most of what we're facing here has been beta tested on Asian people, beginning with the Filipino colonial subjects, America's first overseas empire. The American public health system was built and started in the Philippines. That's where they started getting into vaccinations.
And so what particular thing do you think they're attacking you over? Does this relate to Senator Pan? Does this relate to anything with vaccines that you've been talking about?
It relates to the very deep, occultic, dark heart of the origins of the University of California itself. And this comes from a great author, Gray Bretchen. It's called Imperial San Francisco. And he spends a couple of chapters on engineering, by the way. Gold Rush, you're up in Roseville, right? Engineering, re-engineering the state and the world by extension. And the Bechtel Company, the privately held family company in San Francisco that built such, admittedly, great architectural projects as the Bay Area Rapid Transit System. So he goes into that, but he spends a couple of chapters on the University of California and one of its primary sponsors, Phoebe Hearst. And from what Phoebe Hearst herself consulted, because she was heavily into the occult. And ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about here, and this is another discussion, it traces back to occult knowledge and very, very deep and dark metaphysical quests or issues that these people are trying to work through. So Phoebe Hearst, and you know her through more probably popularly Randolph Hearst and then Patty Hearst, right? But she consulted her geomancer, and she had the keystone of the University of California altered a couple of degrees. She hired a prominent, I think, French Freemasonic architect, right? She altered it a couple of degrees so that it would point directly to Asia, to the Philippines. So the very concept, the foundations, the keystone of the University of California was pointed right at the heart of Asia. And of course, we know now that they weren't going to stop there, they're going to encircle the globe. And now it's blown back to the American people itself, you see.
Right. So how can people support you? You know, now that these hearings are happening and that you're under fire, what can they do to support you?
Well, I think a petition program would also be helpful. I'd like to see students, undergraduates, who are the ones that are most directly affected by this, mobilize, organize themselves, and start up petitions and start going in on the new chancellor, Dr. Gary May, who comes from Georgia Tech. He's another engineer, by the way. This is an engineering program, as I said. And make it very, very difficult for the University of California to target and harass professors that are doing their job, doing it perhaps too well for the likings of their handlers in the city of London and Wall Street, right? We're going to move into a new era of the truth and health economy. Everybody's going to be a winner in this, including the University of California board members and the people that own bonds and control the financial system. The sooner that they make the transition into the truth and health economy that's going to benefit all of humanity, the better off they will be. Because I'm just one person out of many. I have many colleagues who have been influenced by my work, who are listening very carefully at their own risk to what I've been saying over the past 10 years. After I got back from Japan, Okinawa, in 2004, I really, because that's like the heart of East Asian colonialism, right? U.S., there's a big struggle going on right now. So I was able to see that, just like earlier I was in Hiroshima, I was able to see up close and personal what's going on there. I want the young people in particular to move away from the fake synthetic movements that social scientists, consultants have brought into the University of California to divide us along lines of race, class, and gender. That's a PSYOPs. That stands for psychological operations. It was okay in the 60s. It was real. The civil rights movement was real. The women's movement was real. But the social scientists flipped it on its head and they weaponized it. I call it weaponized multiculturalism. Right? It's an old trick. So get wise. I know that's what you're being marketed and taught in certain areas, including Asian American studies, which has been hijacked by the globalists, especially the mental health mafia, right? And mental health comes under the National Institutes of Mental Health. And I'll stress again, one of the servitors of empire, because I was watching your film last night, reviewing it, and I saw the Surgeon General of the United States of America, Dr. Murthy. He's South Asian. He was wearing a full military dress uniform. Why does the Surgeon General of the United States of America wear a military uniform? Why is he or she, because we've had Dr. Joyce Elders, I believe, and I met her before in San Francisco, and Dr. Satcher, a former Surgeon General. Why do they wear a military uniform? I'll go back to the earlier comment about this originating in the colony of the Philippines. That's where the public health system started. The public health system, quote unquote, American public health system is a Pentagon operation. It's not a civilian operation, it's a Pentagon. That's why these people are wearing uniforms. And what does the military do? It blows up objects and kills. So you want that framework, that starting point in charge of public health? We need to rethink, ladies and gentlemen, the entire structure from the bottom up. And I'm going to be there with you to make sure that that happens. The University of California is not going to take me down because there's a multitude of people behind me. My students are beginning to break it down and put it together. I'm so proud of them. They're going to carry it forward. And that's what education is about. That's where the term sensei comes from. It's what comes before generations, generativity, reproduction, and carrying it forward. The university wants to break that generational connectivity. They want to turn the youth against the elders. Pol Pot did it. Mao did it with the Red Guards. What we're seeing now on the campuses, the disruption, is right out of the Maoist Pol Pot, Hitler-Jugend playbook. Because we are the cultural, the historical, the spiritual memory of humanity, which will never be crushed.
We need more people like you speaking out. And we can't thank you enough for speaking the truth and being brave and not being worried about the adversity that you're facing. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to do more with you later. But
I'm looking forward to that because then I can really get into it.
Right. That's a lot for people to digest right now. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Best wishes.